Welcome back to my series on Jupiter in the 10th house. We are now on episode 9. So we're going to look at Jupiter in Scorpio, 10th house. And whose chart is going to help us understand Jupiter and Scorpio in the 10th house? The theatrical rock vocalist Meatloaf. In the first episode, we sorted out the basic idea of what Jupiter in the 10th house is supposed to represent. You can watch that or rewatch that if you want. I'll put a link to it in the description below. But for now, for our purposes in this video, we can just summarize it with the key words. Jupiter in the 10th house is sage-like, transparent, and famous. Now we want to get a similar kind of keyword handle on Jupiter in Scorpio. Well, I have already done a video on Jupiter in Scorpio, and I'll put a link to that also in the description below if you want to follow up with that. Again, for now, the summaries will be more than enough for us. Jupiter in Scorpio is very individualistic, mysterious, spiritual, and fertile. With these two things known to us, we could do a decent job of interpreting what Jupiter in Scorpio in the 10th house is like, but we could do an even better job if we go one step further. If we use the whole sign house system, which I highly recommend, then we know if Jupiter's in Scorpio in the 10th house, then it has to be the Lord of the 11th and the 2nd in the 10th house. And we can interpret that. The 10th is the public, the 11th is profit, and the 2nd is wealth. So you're taking the Lord of profit and wealth, combining them and putting them in the public, out in the open. So it signifies having a lot of expense, spending a lot. Another way of looking at this is that the 11th is the house of performance and the 2nd is the house of the voice. So you're taking the Lord of the voice and the Lord of performance and putting them together and putting them out into society. Which means the person knows how to use their voice in an entertaining way. With these three things known, we can do a very good job of explaining Jupiter in Scorpio in the 10th house. For example, there's something odd going on because Jupiter in Scorpio is mysterious, but Jupiter in the 10th house is transparent. So mysterious is cloudy and foggy and misty, but transparent is open and clear, and those things kind of clash with each other. So if Jupiter's in Scorpio in the 10th house, this native has conflicted expressions. So they are actually expressing themselves honestly. They are really telling you their emotions. But it's very likely that they are the only one in the world that could decode what they're saying in such a way to actually match what they're feeling. Like they're encoding or camouflaging what they're saying so that their true expression has the force and power of a true expression, but yet doesn't really reveal the truth unless you're really an insider or you really are smart and you really figure out what their encoding is. So one of the ways that they achieve this kind of subconscious strategy is by a bluff. They'll tend to have a louder expression of something that isn't really true or isn't really what they're feeling to sort of conceal the quieter expression behind it of what they really are feeling or what they really do think or believe in. Another thing, however, is that Jupiter in Scorpio is very spiritual and Jupiter in the 10th house is very sage-like, which is also meant priestly and so forth. So that's good, and therefore Jupiter in Scorpio in the 10th house signifies people who are spiritually deep. And that's one of the things that they tend to cover up, actually. They're deeper than they really project. It might not be that difficult for them to cover up their spirituality because it might not be so easily recognizable because it's going to be some true thing that they have actually felt and discovered for themselves, not something that they've subscribed to in bulk. Finally, we said that 11th and 2nd Lord in the 10th house signifies being entertaining with your voice. And Jupiter in Scorpio is fertile, which always also means creative and productive artistically. So if Jupiter is in Scorpio in the 10th house, it signifies a native who's entertaining. They're creative, especially with how they use the words. So let's bring in our example of a person who's well known, who has Jupiter and Scorpio in the 10th house. It's Meatloaf. Very interesting illustration of the Jupiter and Scorpio in the 10th house. Very individualistic, like nobody else is like Meatloaf. He's so odd. Very spiritual and deep, but nobody really knows about it. And he never really made a big deal about it. Very good with his voice, right? So he ticks off all these things, very entertaining, conflicted but expressive, open but concealing. If we look specifically at his chart, we can try to figure out why he's so talented. Jupiter and Scorpio in the 10th house could help with being a talented artist because it makes a very interesting kind of expression. But you don't really get an artist just by the fact that you have Jupiter and Scorpio in the 10th house. For artists, you almost always want to see a combination between the 11th, 3rd, and 5th lords because that combines the house of performance and art with the house of skill, the 3rd, and the house of creativity, the 5th. In Meatloaf's case, his 11th lord is being amplified by K2. His 11th lord is Jupiter. It's being amplified by K2, and it's on the 10th house cusp. You always have to pay attention to the cusp. It's the most sensitive part of the sign. It's always the same as the ascendant's degree in the whole sign house system. And the planets that are close to the cusp have much more influence on that house and in that chart. So his Jupiter in the 10th house is his 11th lord, lord of entertainment. And it's on the cusp of the 10th house, and that makes it trine to the 3rd lord. Now, his 3rd lord is Mars, debilitated in the 6th house. So this trine from Jupiter to Mars in Cancer forms a condition called Neech Bhang Raj Yoga, which is a very powerful condition that forms when one planet helps another planet that's in debilitation. So his 11th lord is very good, and it's connecting with his 3rd lord and helping his 3rd lord. And that's what we want to do for an artist. We want to see the 3rd and the 11th lords connect. Along with the 5th lord, and guess what? That Mars that's in his 6th house is his 3rd lord, and it's exactly square to his 5th lord. And that 5th lord is on the 9th house cusp. Another interesting thing about Meatloaf is how unusual he was. Because of his, frankly, his personality is singing everything's very unusual, but let's be honest, his appearance is very unusual. It's not a very common rock star appearance. So what is it? Well, one thing that you can note is that his Jupiter is exaggerated by the node, and that's going to create too much obesity. But the key to seeing a negative outcome from things is you have two malefics aspecting the ascendant. That's why he has that tough look with the big eyebrows and kind of the unrefined features. So now you see how an individual chart refines and fine-tunes and adds detail and specificity to the basic understanding of something like what does Jupiter and Scorpio in the 10th house symbolize. And that basic understanding of Jupiter and Scorpio in the 10th house is itself a refinement and a fine-tuning of an even more fundamental understanding of what does Jupiter in the 10th house represent, which itself is based on other principles and so on. If you want to understand the whole context of your chart, the soil in which your interpretive seeds grow, then visit my website, vicdecara.com, and click Readings. My complete chart report explains each and every nook and cranny of your chart and will keep you occupied in self-discovery for years. I also have two groundbreaking new reports. The first of these, Your Nakshatra, organizes your active nakshatras in order of their importance to you and presents the fundamental interpretations for the planets that occupy them. And the newest report, Star Strength, uses a system called Tarabala to unfold 90 interpretations of the nuanced relationships between all the planets in your chart, which paints a rich and detailed picture of how your various strengths cooperate or compete with each other. Order these or any of my reports and accelerate your journey to deeper self understanding.